News. Just before we go there, we've got time to tell you about something on tomorrow night's programme that'll have the memories just flooding back for you.
This is your all-day music station, Radio Caroline South on 259 meters in the medium wave band. Britain's only...
Yes, it was a pirate radio station off the East Coast. Radio Caroline is celebrating its 50th anniversary and will be taking a trip down memory lane and speaking to some of those involved in the very early days.
Yeah, it is an absolutely brilliant story. We're going to be finding out how it changed the sound of broadcasting. We'll also hear about plans for the station's future as well. It's going to be a spectacular report. That's it. I'll be back with an update at 10:30, but for now, from the whole team here at ITV News Anglia, thanks for watching us.
Someone would say welcome you back to the lunchtime show.
Well, I'm very proud that I played a very small part in changing the sound of radio, really, to what it is today.
We just had the freedom of the airwaves, and it was just marvellous to be a part of that.
This is your all-day music station, Radio Caroline South on 259 meters in the medium wave band.
DJs ad-libbing between records and pop music being played all day long. Within weeks of going on air, Radio Caroline had millions of listeners. It was new and exciting, and Keith Skews was one of the station's first DJs.
The only station we could listen to for pop music was at night time, and that was Radio Luxembourg. But because it transmitted from Luxembourg, the radio signal faded in and it faded out again. And along came Caroline, along came Atlanta, along came Radio London, and the disc jockeys were very personal. We spoke to the audience rather than at them.
Her name is Caroline. Moored off the coast of Frinton was Caroline South, coming from the Mi Amigo. Its sister station, Caroline North, was anchored off the Isle of Man. It wasn't long before a host of other stations followed, basing themselves on boats and coastal forts just outside British waters and out of the reach of British law. Norwich-born Tom Edwards was a DJ at Radio City and then Radio Caroline, and remembers how dangerous it was out at sea.
The tender would leave Felixstowe docks to go out alongside Radio Caroline. If the weather was rough, the ships were literally like this, going up and down on the swell of the ocean. And you had to gauge your jump to get either on Radio Caroline for 2 weeks, or if you didn't jump on board, you just go back to shore and lose 2 weeks' work.
You don't have to look for long on the web before you come across home movies of day trips out to the pirate ships. Paul Graham, at the age of 15, caught the Viking saga from Clacton Beach out to Radio Caroline's Mi Amigo before becoming a DJ for the station.
There'd be a big queue stretching all the way down the front, mostly girls, I have to say. So the DJs were a bit like pop stars, of course, in those days. A lot of us took radios to school, listened to them secretly in the desk at school. I did that actually at one point, and some of us became a bit obsessed, I guess.
But 3 years after going on air, the party was about to come to an end. Following the murder of Radio City's Reg Calvert, the government passed a law making it illegal to work for the stations. Radio Caroline was the only one to remain on air. The operation was scaled down, with supplies coming from Holland.
If I was caught working for Radio Caroline after that bill had been passed, I would have lost my passport. I would probably have gone to prison.
Sometimes DJs were on there for weeks and weeks at a time. And then to eventually get back to Holland on a small tender, as they called it, took anything up to 24 hours, and DJs were not too well on the journey across, certainly in rough seas.
Despite the difficult times, the station continued until 1980, when the Mi Amigo sank in a storm. But 3 years later, Radio Caroline was back, broadcasting from a new home, the Ross Revenge. And this is the ship today, being lovingly restored at Tilbury Docks in Essex. The wreckage was salvaged after the ship ran aground on the Goodwin Sands in 1991. The station can still be heard today via the internet, but with a new mast going up, the dream is to have an AM licence and to broadcast from the ship out to Essex.
All we want to do is entertain the listener, and I think that aspect's been rather lost in British commercial radio.
It may be 50 years old, but there's no shortage of affection for Radio Caroline, and if it wasn't for the station and the others that followed, the sound coming over the airwaves today could be very different. Victoria Lampard, ITV News.
Next tonight, we're going for a trip down memory lane because it was exactly 50 years ago today, at midday, that the pirate pop station Radio Caroline hit the airwaves. It was a moment in radio which changed the course of pop and, of course, broadcasting.
Susie remembers it well. Can I just say, I didn't write that bit. I'm sorry, Susie. The producer wrote that. A very cruel man. I will have words with him. At the time, the launch was considered daring and exciting by pop fans. But the illegal broadcasts from a ship off the Essex coast drew a stern response from the BBC. In a moment, Radio Caroline legend Tony Blackburn. After this, from Mike Liggins.
Anyone who ever loved could look at me and know that I love you.
March 1964. Cilla Black had a top 10 hit. The Queen gave birth to Prince Edward. And Radio Caroline started broadcasting off the Essex coast.
The timing is crucial. We have to be out on the boat and ring the bell at 12 o'clock to commemorate exactly 50 years of pirate radio.
In Walton-on-the-Naze today, a small crowd of pirate radio fans gathered to celebrate 50 years. And I joined some of the pirate radio DJs on the Walton lifeboat. There was a Dutch DJ called Herbie the Fish, and Ian Damon, a Radio London DJ from 1967.
So how did you greet listeners back in 67 then?
Hi there, you there. This is Ian Damon, Mike Side from 9 till 3. Have fun with me.
Excellent.
This is Radio Caroline on 199, England's first commercial radio station. My name's Simon D, with you for the next 2 hours.
A Radio Caroline bell was sounded at midday, the time Caroline went on air. And the RAF search and rescue helicopter flew overhead in tribute. Among the Caroline fans in Walton today was Tim Bryan and his lovely Ford Anglia. He started listening to Caroline on day one and still listens on the internet today.
I just like the whole atmosphere of the whole thing, that they just made you feel part of the station, part of them. It was almost like a party atmosphere going on the whole time because they talked to you, not at you. It was great, absolutely fantastic.
50 years on and the memories are still strong. The Pirates have a special place in the hearts of many, and they always will. Mike Liggins, BBC Look East, Walton-on-the-Naze.
Now, of course, Susie doesn't really remember that, but of course, Radio Caroline launched a host of DJ careers. They included Johnny Walker, Simon D, as we saw in Mike's report, and Tommy Vance. Keith Skews and Andy Archer were also on board and are familiar to local radio listeners in our region.
Well, Tony Blackburn was one of the early recruits, looking very youthful there in Mike's film. We caught up with him earlier and I asked about his memories of his first day on board.
We used to take a little tender boat from Harwich, and I remember seeing Radio Caroline or the Mi Amigo off the coast of Frinton, 3.5 miles off the coast of Frinton, getting on it and doing my first programme, which was called The Big Line-Up, and playing Rag Doll by the Four Seasons. That was the first one. And I thought at that time this is going to alter the whole of broadcasting, which of course it did, and very exciting times.
I've heard, Tony, you may be able to put me straight on this. Is it true that you used to throw things around the studio to make out that the weather was really bad on board?
We did on occasions. It was very annoying because we were being thrown around because Radio Caroline's studio was above the waterline, and it had that massive aerial. So if we got a 10-force gale or something like that, the studios would fly around, and we'd fly around the studios, and the records would annoyingly keep playing. And sometimes you couldn't hear what we were going through. So we used to chuck bits and pieces around the studio, and the public loved it as well. But we did go through some really difficult times. In fact, I was shipwrecked off the coast of Frinton. You know, I was on board when we went in, and it was a 10-force gale, and the television station at the time was putting out a distress call for us, and we were watching the other side. And I remember we came up, and it was at night time, and the captain was standing by the side of me, and he shone this light, and it must have been about 200, 300 yards away, we saw people walking on the seafront, and he shouted out, "Mayday." And I thought to myself, it's a bit too late for this. And I was the first off, actually. We got taken off by the Coast Guards by Breacher's Boy.
Obviously, it was very controversial at the time, Tony, and you then ended up going and starting on BBC Radio 1. Were you surprised to find yourself doing that, joining the BBC, the establishment, as it were?
Well, I mean, you know, I'd had 3 years out on the pirate ships. I had Radio Caroline for 2 years, and then I joined Big L Radio London. That was a wonderful time. That was actually, funnily enough, the station I loved more than anything else, because it brought in the top 40 American jingles and the top 40 format as well, and I loved that. But then I was given a chance to... well, I joined the light programme to start off with a programme called Midday Spin, and then to open up Radio 1, that was, you know, a dream come true.
Do you think radio and broadcasting as a whole would be where it is today without what you and the other pirates did?
I think, you know, commercial radio and BBC local radio and things would have eventually come to be, but pirate radio, certainly, it moved it on. I mean, the whole idea of pirate radio was actually to bring about not Radio 1, but commercial radio, which it didn't. But it did alter the whole of broadcasting, and I'm really very, very proud of that. And at the same time, you know, we had a terrific time out there as well. You know, I look back at some of the photographs and the videos of that day, and it's like looking at another person. And, well, it is. I didn't have this great big thing sticking in my ear in those days. But nevertheless, you know, it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And I was very proud of that, and also proud of opening up Radio 1 as well. You know, I've had a wonderful time.
Tony, it's great to have you on Lookies. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your memories with us.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much to the lifeguards at Frinton who rescued us. You know, if we hadn't taken us off, I wouldn't be sitting here with this ridiculous thing sticking out of my ear now, 50 years later.
Praise be to those lifeguards. Thank you, Tony.
Bye-bye.